time, with a twist, we're taking a look at Chamber of Secrets with, well, a pretty insightful critique. Imagine, like, having magical X-ray vision, right, to see right through the movie. Plot twists, characters, all of it.
Even the special effects, those too.
Oh, for sure, the special effects too. And get this critique. It's got some seriously interesting points. Like, remember Dobby?
Oh, Dobby.
Bless his sock-loving heart. But why all the crazy lengths to keep Harry away from Hogwarts? It almost seemed like he was working against himself sometimes. What do you think?
You're right. The critique does bring up some inconsistencies in Dobby's plan,
Right. It's like he's trying to protect Harry, but...
But his methods are all over the place.
Exactly, like hiding Harry's letters, trying to isolate him.
Keep him away from his friends, yeah.
But then, boom, he just straight up tells Harry everything.
Spills the beans.
Dobby, come on, what was the point of all this sneaking around?
And then there's the whole dessert incident at the Dursleys, right?
Yeah, hilarious in the movie, sure, but seriously.
A bit risky, wasn't it?
Risky. He practically broadcast magic to the whole neighborhood. It's a wonder the Ministry didn't show up for tea, so the critique kind of leaves us hanging there. What's your take on Dobby's, let's call it, unconventional approach?
Well, maybe, just maybe, house elf magic works a bit differently. Different rules.
Different rules? Like what?
Well, imagine, maybe for a house elf, that was subtle.
Like sending a howler is the house elf equivalent of a billboard?
Maybe. Or, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Ooh, tell me.
What if Dobby was just so scared for Harry, so desperate to keep him safe?
Yeah, I mean, he was terrified.
That fear, it can make anyone act a little irrationally, right? Even a well-meaning house elf.
Makes sense, yeah. He just wanted Harry safe, even if his methods were, well, a bit creative.
And it actually connects to a bigger idea the critique brings up.
Mm-hmm.
The whole relationship between magical beings and us humans. Dobby, he's acting out of loyalty, but with a completely different view of the world.
Yeah, it makes you think, what seems dangerous to us might be totally different for a house elf or a goblin or...
Exactly. So how far would they go to protect someone they care about?
Now that's a question worth pondering. And speaking of mysterious and powerful, what about that diary? Tom Riddle's diary. Creepy stuff.
Oh, that diary. Brilliant storytelling, I have to say.
Oh, for sure.
Gives us those glimpses into Voldemort's past.
His backstory, yeah.
But the critique points out something really interesting.
Mm.
Its purpose, how it came to be, it's a bit murky, isn't it?
Right. Like, why a diary? Out of all the things to stash a piece of soul in.
Why not a sock?
Right. And how did Lucius Malfoy get his hands on it in the first place? Feels like some missing pieces there.
A few gaps, yeah.
And while we're talking about gaps, what about Ginny Weasley?
Oh, Ginny. She gets, possessed by this dark object, manipulated.
But the critique points out she doesn't really have much say in it, does she?
Not a lot of agency, that's for sure. And that's a bit of a problem. It reduces her, makes her more like a tool for the plot.
Than a real character.
Exactly. It's a missed opportunity, really, to show her strength, her resilience, qualities that become so important later.
Yeah, you're right. The movie sort of turns her into just a way for Voldemort to come back. Would have been amazing to see her fighting back more, having her own thoughts about it all.
Her own perspective.
This critique, it's making me see the whole movie in a whole new light. It's wild. Things I never noticed before are suddenly, like, right there.
That's what a good critique does. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, but while we're talking characters, let's talk about the ones who do get a chance to shine, because some of them really come alive in this one.
Oh, absolutely. The critique highlights some of the nuances, like Harry, for example. He's not just the boy who lived anymore, He's wrestling with who he is, his own identity.
Yeah, so much more depth.
Layers of complexity. It's great.
And then there's Ron. Gotta admit, he's my favorite. Still the funny guy, for sure.
Oh, he's hilarious.
But there's this one moment that the critique points out, and it's so telling. When he stands up to Malfoy, when Malfoy calls Hermione that awful name.
That's a pivotal scene for sure.
It shows us that Ron, under all the jokes and the goofing off, he's got this strong moral compass.
He stands up for what's right, no matter what.
Even facing down someone like Malfoy, which, let's be honest, takes guts. Especially with all the prejudice in the wizarding world. And it makes you think, doesn't it? About the real world, too.
Oh, absolutely. The film tackles that issue head on. It's a powerful message about speaking out against discrimination.
Because staying silent, it's like you're going along with it.
Exactly.
Okay, but speaking of uncomfortable, can we talk about Lockhart for a sec? This guy, talk about fame gone wrong.
Oh, Lockhart. He's a whole study in himself.
Right, the epitome of all flash and no substance.
The critique calls him a commentary on celebrity culture, and I think they're spot on. He cares more about his image than actually being competent.
His whole life is a lie. The critique nails it. He's a satire of celebrity worship.
And it's brilliant, really,
Yeah.
because it makes us think about authenticity, the dangers of just blindly following someone. Lockhart's downfall. It's a warning. Think critically, folks, and question what you're told, especially when it's coming from someone in power.
It really makes you think about those times when you've been, I don't know, swept up by someone's hype, only to be totally let down later.
It's a good reminder to look beyond the surface. Think for yourself.
Absolutely. All right, ready for a little behind-the-scenes action. Let's talk visuals.
Let's do it.
I mean, the chamber itself, visually stunning. The set design is incredible. That whole ancient power vibe.
Oh, it's breathtaking. Beautiful, but terrifying at the same time.
I remember seeing it for the first time. I was totally awestruck. It felt so real, like I could just step right into that snake-infested world. How about you? Did you have a similar experience?
Absolutely. It's a testament to the artistry, and the basilisk, well, maybe a bit dated by today's CGI, but still pretty imposing.
The CGI, yeah, some of it hasn't aged as well, especially the flying car scene, but it's still a thrill to watch, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. The critique does point that out, that some of the effects haven't held up quite as well.
But the overall effect is undeniable.
Absolutely.
All right, ready for the fun part? Plot holes and head scratchers.
Oh, let's do it.
The critique has a whole section on them, and oh boy, are there some good ones.
The Chamber of Secrets is famous for them, isn't it?
It really is. Should we start with the classic? The basilisk in the pipes?
Oh, we have to. I mean, come on, a giant snake slithering through the plumbing of Hogwarts. Even with magic, that's a stretch.
Imagine trying to explain that plumbing bill to Hogwarts Board of Governors.
Just a minor basilisk issue, nothing to worry about.
Exactly. But it brings up a bigger question, doesn't it? How can Hogwarts, this magical haven, be so vulnerable? You'd think they'd have some sort of magical security system for a giant snake in the walls.
Right. A giant snake in the plumbing alarm.
Oh, definitely. With flashing lights and a voice booming, evacuate, evacuate.
I can see it now.
Speaking of things that don't quite add up, what about the polyjuice potion?
Ah, yes, the polyjuice potion. Always a fascinating one.
Here's the thing, though. The critique points out, when Harry and Ron turn into Crabbe and Goyle, their voices don't change.
Oh, that's right.
Wouldn't that be the first thing people notice? Hey, Crabbe, why do you sound like Harry?
It's a pretty big oversight, isn't it? The potion changes everything, your whole appearance, but not your voice.
It feels a bit like a plot convenience, to be honest.
Like, okay, just change your looks, but don't worry about your voices. No one will notice.
Right. In a world with magic, you'd think they'd have figured out the voice thing, too.
You would think, wouldn't you?
But hey, even with the little hiccups, the polyjuice potion scene is still pretty entertaining.
Oh, absolutely.
So it seems like this critique is all about encouraging us to look deeper. Appreciate the magic of Chamber of Secrets, sure, but also see the flaws, the things that don't quite add up.
Exactly. Engage with it. Ask questions, think it through.
Which is what we do here on the deep dive. It's like we're putting the movie under a microscope. Every little detail, every plot twist. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
I love it. And, even though we're dissecting the film, it doesn't ruin the enjoyment at all. If anything, it adds to it.
Totally. It's like finding all these hidden Easter eggs. And those little imperfections, they actually make it more relatable. Even in a magical world, things aren't always perfect.
Perfection is overrated anyway.
So true.
So, where does all this lead us? What's the big takeaway from our deep dives into Chamber of Secrets?
For me, it's realizing that even these stories we love, they have their imperfections. But those imperfections, they don't lessen the story's value at all. In fact, they give us something to talk about, something to think about.
They make us think critically. Challenge our assumptions.
Exactly, like finding a hidden message, something more than just the surface story.
Exactly. That's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. It's not about just finding flaws. It's about understanding how they fit into the bigger picture.
Well said. This has been an awesome trip back to Hogwarts, seeing Chamber of Secrets in a whole new light.
It's been a joy exploring all this with you, seeing how different perspectives can change how we view even familiar stories.
So for everyone listening, I hope this has sparked your own curiosity about Chamber of Secrets. Maybe you'll watch it again, notice things you didn't see before. What do you think will stand out now?
Maybe you'll even come up with your own theories, your own explanations for some of the things we've talked about.
Because that's the magic of storytelling, right? Getting lost in the world, questioning, analyzing, making it your own.
It's all about those aha moments, making those connections.
And speaking of connections, let's connect back to some of those bigger ideas we were talking about earlier.
Good idea.
Prejudice, hero worship, the power of knowledge. We see them play out in the wizarding world.
But they're here in the real world too, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. Even though Chamber of Secrets is set in this magical world, the themes, they're so human.
Exactly. That's what makes it so powerful. We get to explore these big ideas in a safe space, think about our own beliefs, and see things from different perspectives.
It's like looking into a mirror, but a magical mirror, one that shows us the good and the bad.
Love that. It's about recognizing that we all have that potential for both darkness and light.
That's a powerful message to take away from this. And really, it's just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover.
Chamber of Secrets is just one chapter in a much bigger story.
And we're just getting started.
So what's next? What other mysteries are waiting for us?
Well, that's a story for another deep dive.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About how easily we get caught up in hype.
Oh, totally. Especially now, right?
Yeah.
Information overload everywhere you look. It's easy to just go with the flow. But Lockhart, he's a good reminder.
Be a critical thinker.
Exactly. Don't just take everything at face value.
Whether it's a celebrity wizard or
the news, social media.
any source of information, really. You got to be careful.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears for a bit. Let's talk about the visuals in the film. The Chamber of Secrets itself, visually, it's stunning. The set design, incredible.
It really captures that ancient power, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Beautiful, but also kind of terrifying.
A little unsettling.
And the lighting, all those flickering torches, the eerie green light.
Creates such a mood.
Oh, totally. I remember the first time I saw the chamber on screen, I was like completely mesmerized. It felt so real. I could practically feel the dampness, smell the, well, whatever a giant snake's lair smells like. What about you? What was your first impression?
Oh, I had the same reaction. I was just completely drawn in. It's a real testament to the artistry of the whole film.
And the basilisk itself, I mean, maybe the CGI isn't quite as impressive now.
It has aged a bit, yeah?
It's still pretty intimidating, right?
Oh, absolutely. A classic movie monster.
And that flying car scene, yeah, the CGI there is a bit rough around the edges now.
The critique does point that out.
But I still love it. It's such a classic Harry Potter moment.
Pure magic.
The critique acknowledges that some of the special effects, they haven't aged as well. But the overall impact of the film, visually, it's undeniable.
It really is. It's a feast for the eyes.
All right, are you ready for this? The part I know everyone's been waiting for.
Hit me with it.
Plot holes and head scratchers. The critique has a whole section dedicated to them. And oh boy, are there some good ones.
The Chamber of Secrets is kind of famous for them, isn't it?
It really is. All right, let's start with the big one. The basilisk in the pipes.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about that. I mean, come on. A giant snake slithering through the plumbing system of Hogwarts. That's pushing it, even for a magical world.
Seriously, what kind of wrench do you need for that? Imagine trying to explain that plumbing bill.
Oh, just a minor basilisk incident. Happens all the time.
Right. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Hogwarts, this magical place, it's supposed to be safe, but apparently a giant snake can just waltz right in through the pipes. No problem.
You'd think they'd have some kind of magical alarm system, wouldn't you?
Oh, totally. Like a big flashing sign, giant snake in the plumbing, evacuate.
I can just picture it.
All right, here's another one that always bugged me. The polyjuice potion.
Ah, yes. The polyjuice potion. Always a fun one to think about.
It's such a cool concept, but the way it's used in the film, there's this one detail that always makes me scratch my head.
What's that?
When Harry and Ron turn into Crabbe and Goyle, their voices don't change.
Oh, you're right.
You'd think that would be the first thing people would notice. Like, hey, Crabbe, why do you sound like Harry Potter? It's a pretty big oversight.
It is, isn't it? The potion changes your appearance, but not your voice. Doesn't quite add up.
It feels like they just needed a way to move the plot along without really thinking through all the details.
A little plot convenience.
Exactly. Like, okay, guys, just change your looks. Don't worry about your voices. No one will notice. Come on.
In a world with magic, you'd think they could have worked out the voice thing, too.
Right. It's one of those things where you just have to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Roll with it. Enjoy the ride.
But it's fun to point out these little inconsistencies, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's all part of the fun.
It makes you think about the rules of the magical world and how even with magic there have to be some limitations.
Otherwise, it just becomes too unbelievable.
Exactly. So it seems like this critique, it's really encouraging us to, look beyond the surface of the film, appreciate the magic, sure, but also acknowledge those little flaws and inconsistencies.
Don't just passively watch. Engage with it.
Think critically.
Ask questions.
Which is what we try to do here on the deep dive, right? We're putting the movie under the microscope, analyzing every little detail.
It's like we're detectives, uncovering the secrets of the film.
Exactly. And what I love is that even though we're, dissecting the film, finding those little flaws, it doesn't take away from the enjoyment at all. If anything, it adds to it.
I agree. It makes it richer, somehow.
It's like finding those hidden Easter eggs. And those little imperfections, they make the story more relatable,
Or human.
Exactly. Because even in a magical world, things aren't always perfect.
And that's okay.
Perfection is overrated anyway. So where does all this lead us? What's the big takeaway from our deep dive into Chamber of Secrets?
Well, for me, it's the reminder that even our favorite stories, they have their flaws.
But those flaws don't make them any less enjoyable.
In fact, sometimes those flaws are what make them so interesting.
I love that. It's like embracing the quirks and imperfections of a good friend.
They're part of what makes them who they are.
Exactly. And Chamber of Secrets, even with its plot holes and inconsistencies, it's still a fantastic story.
A story about friendship, courage.
Facing your fears.
Exactly. And those are themes that resonate with everyone, no matter what age you are.
And it's a story that continues to resonate. Years later, people are still talking about it, debating it, discovering new things about it. That's the power of a great story, isn't it?
Absolutely. It stays with you.
So for everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Chamber of Secrets, flaws and all.
Maybe you'll even notice things you didn't see before.
Come up with your own theories.
Or even just enjoy it on a whole new level.
Because that's what's so great about revisiting a story you love. You always find something new to appreciate.
It's like rediscovering an old friend.
And like with any good friend, we can appreciate their strengths, their weaknesses.
And still love them just the same.
Perfectly said. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've spent this whole deep dive analyzing Chamber of Secrets, picking it apart, looking at all the details. But at its heart, it's a story about hope.
It is, isn't it? Even in the darkest moments.
There's always that glimmer of light.
That belief that things can get better.
That good will triumph over evil.
And that's a message that I think we all need to hear, don't you?
Absolutely. No matter what challenges we're facing in our own lives.
Remember the lessons of Chamber of Secrets.
Embrace the magic.
And never give up hope.
Beautifully said. And that brings up something really interesting from the critique that we haven't really touched on yet. The lasting impact of these stories.
How they stay with us, even years later.
Exactly. It's like they become part of us, part of our culture. They shape how we see the world, how we talk about things.
How many times have you heard someone say, "Don't be a Lockhart"?
Or, "That's some serious Dobby logic."
Yeah.
It's like these characters, they've become part of our everyday language.
It's amazing, isn't it? How these stories, they go beyond just being entertainment.
They teach us. They inspire us.
They connect us.
It's like we're all part of this giant Harry Potter fan club, sharing our thoughts and interpretations, keeping the magic alive.
And that's one of the best things about these deep dives, I think. It's a chance to connect with other fans, to see things from different perspectives.
To keep the conversation going.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening, I hope this has been a chance to rediscover the magic of Chamber of Secrets, to see it with fresh eyes.
To find new meaning in it.
And maybe even to be inspired to revisit the book because, let's be honest, it's always a good time to go back to Hogwarts.
Always. And who knows, maybe in our next deep dive, we'll explore another corner of the wizarding world together.
Until then, keep the magic alive.
It's really true, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating how these stories, they just stick with us, even after all these years.
Oh, yeah. It's like they become part of our cultural vocabulary or something. They pop up everywhere.
You hear it in everyday conversations.
Like, how many times have you heard someone say, "Don't be a Lockhart"?
Right. Or, "That's some serious Dobby logic."
It's wild. These characters, their actions, they've become like these shorthand ways of talking about stuff.
It's amazing how these stories, they go beyond just being entertainment.
They really do. They teach us things. They inspire us.
And bring people together.
It's like we're all part of this giant Harry Potter fan club. We're all sharing our thoughts, our interpretations, keeping the magic alive.
And that's honestly one of the best parts of doing these deep dives.
Oh, totally.
It's a chance to connect with other fans,
Yeah.
to hear different perspectives.
To keep the conversation going.
Exactly.
So to everyone listening, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for Chamber of Secrets, a chance to see it with fresh eyes, maybe find some new meaning in it.
Maybe it'll even inspire you to revisit the book.
Because it's always a good time to go back to Hogwarts, isn't it?
Always. And who knows, maybe on our next deep dive, we'll explore another corner of the wizarding world together.
Until then, keep the magic alive.